question. Thank you. What would be the legacy? What would be the thing that you, as the I, would want to be known for, or remembered for?
On that level, I mean, I could say, family and, my son and all that. But you're asking on a different level. So I think the level you're asking at, the answer is my books. I mean, I've written dozens, and I feel personally compelled to share what I learned and to share what I think is true. As long as everyone realizes this is just my opinion, and I try to make that clear in my books also, that this is just one person's experience and one person's understanding of that experience. But if it can be of help to people, then the way I reach out is through my books.
And now you have the Wisdom House.
Now I have this place, Wisdom House, here on Scarrett Bennett campus. And I have this firm, I believe in the power of conversation. And by conversation, I mean sharing information in an unscripted manner, not trying to convince one another, but simply opening to each other's truth, each other's experience, and becoming so vulnerable to the other person's experience that you could actually be changed by it. And that's what Wisdom House is for. So Wisdom House is really a place of conversation. We have breakfast conversations and lunch conversations and day-long and weekend-long conversations with different teachers that we bring in. But the idea, as best we can do it, is to avoid just a didactic lecture. Anything I could read in a book, I'd rather read in a book. What I really want when we bring, for example, in April, when we bring Andrew Harvey here, I've read all of Andrew Harvey's books. I'm not interested in having Andrew Harvey read them back to me or spout back to me what he's already written. I can do that on my own time. What I want is to have a conversation. I realize we'll have lots of people there, so it's not one-on-one, but you can still approximate a real conversation where he's speaking his truth without a script, and we're responding to what he's saying with our own experience, also without a script. And it's in that sharing of our experiences and our realities that we can all be changed, transformed. So Wisdom House is really for that. It's a place for conversation.
Mm-hmm. And that conversation, if I'm interpreting correctly, would be that's almost where the egos could either get really in the way or they could get really out of the way.
Yeah, if the egos are in the way, then it's not a conversation, it's a debate, right? Or someone's trying to defend a position. One of the things I learned, David Bohm, the physicist, he would hold these dialogues, and he had these guidelines for doing them. And one of the things he says is, if you're in this, and he talks about large gatherings of people having conversations, if you're in these conversation settings and you find your stomach tightening, and you're trying, he says, pay attention to that, because you're trying to defend something that you really don't believe in or really can't prove, but you just don't want to. You're so attached to it, you don't want to let it go. And he says, look to the body, see how the body's responding, and then check to see what it is the body's trying to defend or hold on to, and then see if you can let that go. Because at that point, it's just ego to ego. And what I'm really looking for is when I can step out of what I think I know and say, okay, this is as far as my experience goes. Let's step out of that. And the other person steps out of his or her limited experience. And then we just meet and see what happens. And it takes some time, because it can't happen in 2 seconds necessarily. But when it does happen, it is incredibly transformative. And Martin Buber, because this is really from Martin Buber says that's where God manifests, in that in-between space, when we each step out of our egoic selves into another level of consciousness, and you see the divine, you meet the divine as the other person. Not in, but as. I mean, really, you are a manifestation of God fully. But I don't know that until we meet without our labels and our egoic baggage.
It seems to me that you almost described sort of a variation of what I would define as peace.
Well, it depends what you mean by peace, I suppose.
Acceptance. Just
utter
acceptance
right.
of one another. Utter acceptance. It's okay for you to think the way you think. It's okay for you to speak the way you speak. It's okay for you to be exactly who you are in that moment.
Right. And then to see if you can drop the whole thing. So it's I mean, it's fine for you to be who you are, as long as it's not causing physical damage, I guess. But it's fine for you to be who you are, but who you are isn't who you really are. So can we create a safe enough environment where, at least for a moment, you and I could not be who we think we are, but who we really are, and see what happens there. And there you don't know what's going to happen. And that may take us out of what might be called a peaceful setting into a very tense setting. And maybe because we're both maybe so attached to who we are, or one of us is so attached to who we are, that there's a lot of conflict first, and that finally releases, and then there's this great peace that comes out of that, because I'm no longer trying to be anybody. I'm just there, present.
At that point, it seems that it kind of goes into that state of nothing, from which all things are.
Yeah, the state of nothing, or a state of not knowing, right? A state of not knowing. There's this, in the Bible, there's this passage where God gives Moses the instructions on how to build the tabernacle. And it's all this detail about the box, and then there's two angels on top of the box, and their wings they face each other, and their wings are facing each other. And there's space between the wings. And the text says that God will meet you in the space between the wings. You have to build the box. You expect God to be in the box. I mean, all of our religions define the box and say, oh, God's in our box. But the Bible gives you this really incredible insight. You build the box in order to find the space. You know, it's a very Taoist kind of idea. You build the box to find the space, and it's in that space, which has got nothing in it, that unknowing space, that unknowable space, the in-between where we both step out of our egos, that the divine is met. In the box is just stuff that you know. And it's interesting. I mean, I study it and I teach it at the university, various religious boxes, but none of it is that divine, living divine reality. That stuff isn't in a box.
I'm reminded of the equation at 1 + 1 = 3.
Right.
Right. Yeah. The one and the two and the space in between. Right.
Exactly.
Absolutely. And you've mentioned a lot of other sort of, well, I won't say a lot, but it's very apparent that you are very open to the ideas and concepts of other religions and philosophies. And then you have mentioned a few within our conversation here. And before we started talking, I'd asked you about a particular project that you might want to share. And I think it tied into sort of an interfaith reality. So I'd love to wrap things up kind of discussing what that is all about.
Sure. Well, the first weekend in February in 2012, Scarrett Wisdom House and a group called the Big I, and the I stands for Interfaith, Interspiritual, and Integral, are putting on what we're calling the Big I Conference, the future of spirituality. And we've got 23 speakers, I think, coming. And the idea is to explore what is beyond religion. Because when I think interfaith, I think of it differently than just Hindus and Buddhists and Jews and Christians and Muslims and all sitting around at a table sharing. Well, this is what we Jews believe, and this is what we Muslims believe. I don't care about that. I can get that from a book. What I want is people who are steeped in their tradition or in none to come together and say, so what do we think is true? How do we step out of these boxes and meet in that unknown space? And that's what interfaith for me really is. It's people willing to bring their experience from within their traditions to bear, as opposed to comparing traditions. And that's what this Big I conference is going to be about.